Elden Ring is too hard. I bought a game that I knew was supposed to be hard, and it's too hard, and now I'm not happy with it being too hard. Yeah, make it make sense.
It's time to deal with Erdtree. This is an absolutely ginormous $40 DLC for Elden Ring. It is the only bit of DLC that Elden Ring is supposed to get, and it's been an interesting launch. Before it came out, there were reviews. The reviews were essentially, well, they were completely glowing, like mostly in the 8s, in the 9s. Now, there were a few reviewers who were criticizing the difficulty, and before launch, some of them certainly got a little bit of internet flack for criticizing that difficulty. Things got interesting, though, when the game dropped onto Steam, and its score dropped way down from the probably 95 most of it.
The irony of gamers who want hard things. It's not the fact that people want hard things, it's the fact that people want someone to tell them, wow, you beat a difficult thing. They don't actually want it to be difficult, and that is this Elden Ring's DLC's problem. It's actually difficult. Bosses have more than 2 attacks, and they have more than 1 pattern. Yeah, that's a little bit too much for the casual Elden Ring fan.
Was expected, down to the low 60s. And that's not just because it's a hard game, or maybe a game that is hard in ways that people didn't expect from Elden Ring. It's also because there were performance issues. Now, I've got really good news for it. I'm handing over this video to Matt. You may recognize him from a while back in our videos, but basically, he's our very own Souls-like demon. He's put a whole weekend into the DLC. So, over to Matt, and to keep the show on the road, here's today's sponsor. Boot.dev, longtime friend of the channel, who are courses up online too.
Game, and it's time for difficulty discourse once again. But this time is quite serious because this is the most anticipated DLC from one of the most trusted and beloved developers of all time, and it has a 65% user review rating on Steam. Yeah, the difficulty discourse is real this time. So to start with, the open critic score here, 94 out of 100. Incredible, fantastic, basically everyone loved it.
Wow, the critic score, that doesn't matter, is high, boys. Oof, man, I guess we were all wrong about the Acolyte. Must be amazing.
Except Eurogamer were 3 out of 5. They pointed out some issues that most people seem to disagree with. So to talk about what it actually is, it's basically a mini sequel, an expansion, in the way that PC players,
I wouldn't call this DLC mini.
We've wanted to return to expansions where it's the game we like, but a lot more of it, a lot more refined.
You see, this is literally the problem with your typical Elden Ring player, okay? We already see it in the gameplay right here. We saw him fight a different mob here at the start, and he was spamming 1 attack. And now, he's against a mob, and doing a different mob, and doing the exact same thing. And this mob doesn't allow you to do it. Pretty evidently and clearly, right? But what is the response of this player? Is it to adapt, play safer or differently, or just to continue spamming the same button over and over and over again? Well, the answer is obviously spamming the same button over and over again. That is the problem with the people who are playing Elden Ring and Dark Souls in general.
But a lot more of it, a lot more refined, a lot more confidence in the design. Not with Elden Ring, of course, but with a lot of games, you'll play a game and you'll really get into it. You'll really fall in love with the world. You'll get good at it. You'll really enjoy the peak of what it has to offer, and then it ends. But with expansions, it used to be, we get to give you, the player, more of it. So they've done that perfectly here, where they play with your expectations in fun ways with their design, with their complexity in dungeons. It's way more advanced on average, their designs for levels and maps and things like that, with a lot more verticality, a lot more moving around to get to different places. It's very, very cool. And the narrative plays on what you understand about the game really heavily and really well. It doesn't assume massive understanding, but all of the little details, the lore people are having such a good time with this. It is fantastic. And even in difficulty terms, right? The progression is...
The lore people could probably make a living for a year off YouTube just from a 5-second trailer for this, okay?
It's kind of smart on paper. It's gated inside the expansion. So if you...
Again, literally performing the same attack over and over again. This is why people are calling Elden Ring hard, because this is the only thing that people know how to do.
Come in to Elden Ring, doesn't matter if you're soul level 100 and something or soul level 500 and something, you can hop in, and as long as you've beaten Mog, you'll be able to get in. you'll be able to enjoy this. You'll be able to play right away without some bullshit, right? Because, obviously it's behind that boss. It is more endgame. It is substantially more endgame. So this is the highest rated DLC of all time. The previous champion was Witcher 3 Blood and Wine, which won a Game of the Year for being such a good DLC. It won RPG Game of the Year at one point. And, they have this incredible illustration of, Geralt beating Mog to go, yep, this is it. You get the crown now. Congratulations. You definitely deserve it. And, they'll love it for sure. That on top of Elden Ring being 25 million players just announced before the launch of this DLC. This is culture. This is huge. Elden Ring is a success unlike anything else that was previously niche before. It's unbelievable. And that's only going to improve. That's only going to increase because this game is a top seller, has been the whole weekend. People are diving in, even though you see that mixed review thing. Even player.
Yeah, we expected this, that people are gonna dive in into Elden Ring. This is not exactly unexpected.
Numbers. Everyone's here. Everyone's back. Even if...
By the way, this number is absolutely huge. You need to understand why, okay? This was the peak, and this almost got to the peak. The fact that people are still diving in and playing, even though the DLC is actually finally hard, not harder. The original Elden Ring and Dark Souls are not hard games. They're just kind of, they're basically just check are you stupid or not, honestly. This one is a bit actually harder because more patterns and, the spamming one attack doesn't work anymore on almost anything. So, the fact that this is gated behind a boss that initially only 30% of the player base has killed, kinda insane. This number is absolutely ginormous. It is actually far more impressive than the all-time peak. And the all-time peak was when it launched, I think. So yeah, this number is mind-blowingly big, actually.
Only 35% of people on Steam can actually get in. People are still playing. People are loving this. It's kind of nuts. Where does the review score come from then? 67% review rating. So I've obviously hinted difficulty is one part, where there's a huge amount of people saying it is literally too hard. That's one thing. The other thing, obviously very...
The Kaisenat, yesterday or was it before yesterday, killed the last boss of this DLC. He literally has been playing Elden Ring and FromSoft games for less than, I think, 2 months? Less than 2 months? And he's already better than everyone else. You have no excuse.
Serious thing? Performance, right? So we'll break this down overall to see. There's a third of the audience rejecting it. We look at the language breakdown, and it is English, 83% positive. It's dragged down very heavily by other...
Wait. What does this check mean? And why is Turkish squelched out?
languages, with specifically the Chinese, Koreans, and Japanese.
Is Turkish not a language? I guess not.
Some of the lowest reviews, some of that being cultural differences, right? But the English reviews are where we're going to be able to...
So who has the verse? Ooh, simplified Chinese, man. Well, yeah, the Chinese definitely are not gonna like a hard game that they can't pay to win in. That is for sure. English actually scores well. That's bad, that's bad. Brazil, keeping it real as always. Traditional Chinese, interesting. Germans, losers. Spanish, Spain, okay. French, everyone's kind of Japanese, negative, interesting. Well, again, for China and Japan, it's like, this is a cultural thing. If they can't beat a game, they're pretty pissed. And if they can't pay to win in that game, they get even more pissed.
To read what's going on. And a lot of it is performance. A lot of it is the age-old story of FromSoft. They made the PC port. Look at Dark Souls 1, right? Look at Dark Souls 1. It made its way to PC after a couple of years. It had games for Windows Live, which was an absolute nightmare to work with. Terrible experience. Then Durant came and solved the problem, basically made the game playable with mods. Did the same again for Dark Souls 2 and Dark Souls 3, which were also not great ports, slightly improving all the time. Then you get Bloodborne on PS4, runs terribly and miserably, which is insane for being like, a console exclusive. You'd think Japan Studio would have been able to solve that. No, FromSoft apparently just have, they are not spec'd into high technical capability a lot of the time. So what does that look like then? That looks an awful lot like the usual, right? You've got, that's a spell effect. Why am I at 20 FPS? Cool. Oh, there's like 10 enemies on my screen and now I'm at 30 frames per second.
Yo, listen. The fact that you got hit here had nothing to do with a bad FPS.
Second down from 60. fantastic. That's cool. I really enjoy that. All of that like usual stuff. But there's also some other things like people having audio glitches. Now, I haven't experienced
Yeah, none of this is an FPS problem, believe it or not.
those myself. I've actually had like a pretty great time overall on PC.
Again, literally just watching the average Dark Soul player spam one button constantly and getting killed over and over and over again and learning nothing is kind of poetry in my eyes to a certain degree. It just completely contextualizes the world perfectly in my honest eyes.
Not to go all works on my machine on you, but some people will be lucky and miss all of the problems that do exist. Unless you have, of course, a Steam Deck, in which case, too bad. Despite Elden Ring being one of the top 10 games on Steam Deck since it was verified, it's kind of just broken. It doesn't run very well. You're going to have all issues under the sun, including one.
Oh, that actually hit? Wait, did that hit?
Since it was verified,
Well, it did
it's
hit.
kind
Let's
of
look
just
again.
broken. It doesn't run very well.
Oh yeah, that definitely hit because you completely fumbled the guy. How do you fail this? The invulnerability frames are at the start. I don't play this game and I even understand that. I mean,
You're going to have all issues.
also, by the way, this is the reason why I can't absolutely... I'm coming back to Lost Ark when they release solo raids. It's gonna be amazing, and I am definitely not gonna play Surge Deathblade. That is not happening. Surge Deathblade sounds horrible as solo.
Under the sun.
Well, actually, maybe a solo Surge Deathblade could actually be good.
Including one major issue where if the game's suspended for 5 minutes, it stops eating inputs until restart, which is a massive pain in the ass. That one's been acknowledged, so hopefully it's fixed. But again, it's like, this is another case of a PC port. Needed more time in the oven, realistically. But the thing that we're going to talk about today a little bit more, because, you know, you can only talk performance issues so much as, stop letting this happen, please. For the love of God, stop. The other thing then is the difficulty discourse, is the difficulty. And people are literally saying it is way too hard. An awful lot of it is, this is literally too difficult. And some of that...
If you see any of this gameplay and you're thinking, that's literally me for real, then no, the difficulty is not hard. You're just an idiot.
Boils down to the design, right? To this being more endgame Elden Ring, not more what's a cross section of Elden Ring. Put that in, more focus on the late game, on the end game, because despite this being an incredibly beautiful DLC in a whole bunch of ways, being like some of the most beautiful vistas, some of the most beautiful areas, some of the most well-designed areas and smartest areas, and like they're trying things that are really different as well, and I won't spoil anything, but they're really, really fantastic areas. It's beautiful, it sounds beautiful a bunch of the time, the music is excellent, enemy design is incredible, realistically, but also kind of brutal, same with bosses, and this is where we run into some problems, right? I think the biggest problem, realistically, boils down to this, and I guess the fallout, the after effects, the
We already saw that.
aftershocks of this. We'll explain it
We
using
saw
a very
this,
fun
boss.
Google translated Chinese review.
Again.
It says, Miyazaki Hidetaka participated in the Japanese college entrance examination when he was young. When he opened the door, he ate a flying grass from the invigilator. I assume that'll mean some sort of attack. The invigilator began to shine brightly and dance around, obviously being an allegory for a boss at this point. Miyazaki wanted to answer the questions, but he was locked on and he could only shake his head 360 degrees. He finally looked at the question and it was university difficulty question. He needed to collect the test paper fragments before entering the exam room to change it to a middle school difficulty question. And this may sound nonsensical, but trust me, I'll also mention that Chinese reviews tend to be, according to Daniel Ahmad here, is that Steam reviews are often more of a comment section because
Dude, we literally can see from the people disliking it on Steam by country breakdown that China's just a bunch of pussies. Okay, listen.
the community doesn't exist there, and there's obviously the firewall. So any outlet they can possibly have to communicate, they'll use it for commenting purposes, as well as games being unfair in their design has particularly been a negative thing for Chinese players, especially when a lot of the guides are going to be English focused. So they're going to not have to this.
Bro, you don't need a guide for this game. Maybe you do need a guide if you have missed a boss or two, because, you know, you just don't look at every nook and cranny. That I can understand, by the way. But you don't need a guide to actually tell you how to kill a damn boss. You don't. Is that crazy? Am I crazy? Am I taking crazy pills?
The same degree of
China and Japan to a certain degree, but definitely more China. just has the mentality, oh, if I can't beat something, it's bad because I should be able to beat it because I'm a special snowflake and I'm the bestest ever. And if there's no pay to win, that's even worse because they like pay to win.
Oh, there's a problem. How do I solve it? So, having played a
It is literally accepted in their culture.
good like 20 or so hours of it over the weekend, not quite at the end of it, but maybe half, 2/3 of the way through, and having problems, but then learning to love those problems and kind of understanding it all. Here's what I think the issue with difficulty is, and it's multifaceted, right? There are two major components, maybe three, that are pushing the problems here. And the number one is their answer to a problem, right? The Scadutree, the Shadow Tree, blessings, right? And these are, you pick up fragments from around the world, usually in the same way you would get, the golden seeds or the sacred tears from churches and from like little
Are you getting bored? I'm getting bored, honestly.
Erdtree fragments. You would get those and they would give you more flasks, or they would give you flask upgrades. It's similar, but this is just flat scaling. So if you get one more rank of the Shadow Tree blessing, you'll deal an extra 4% damage and take 2% less damage. That scales the whole way up to plus 20, which means that
Yeah, that's what it's called. That's why it's called, percent based.
it's an extra 80% damage and taking 40% less damage, which is
Wow.
crazy. That is like an
Wow.
obscene difference. That is really, really brutal scaling. Because especially like you're playing, Elden Ring, you're often on a knife's edge anyway.
I feel this literally does not deserve anything more than a happy friends type of reaction.
Anyway,
Not happy friends, but smiling friends type of reaction.
you can kill the enemy 10% faster, that's 10% less time for you to make a mistake and die. If you can make that 20%, that's a massive difference. And often you'll play those games and find that one level of an item of a weapon upgrade will change the game for you because of your extra damage output, or even squeezing in one extra attack. That's going to make all the difference. So this is their answer to basically huge variance in player power coming in. Like
Wait, so this boss just effectively actually falls over and stops attacking after one round of like 3 or 4 chain attacks, and when you hit him with a light attack? And Young, made a whole video talking about how great he is for defeating this. Bruv. I also don't think he actually defeated it. Because he would have shown defeating the boss.
120, 130 when I came in, reasonably low. I just kind of eked out a victory on Mog and came in. But then other people have been going in at soul level 500 and having a much similar time, I should say, instead of the difference you would expect from that.
If you want to complain about something in Dark Souls, and let's have a real discussion, okay? Summons. There's a bunch of Puritans that are saying summons are bad, summons are zero skill and whatnot. If you use summons, you're bad. But at the same time, they will use blatantly other completely unintendedly broken mechanics that are 10 times stronger in actuality than they were intended to be. Okay? If we want to have an actual discussion, let's have that discussion, okay? Well, you can have that discussion in the comment sections without me because I'm getting really bored. Anyway, that was Bellier news, and that was not even Bellier. It was the fat guy, who's now more skinny. I guess bad for him for being such an absolute hateful bigot for choosing to be, not accepting that fat is beautiful. Anyway, this was Kuzer Sen. Bye-bye.